Madam Chairwoman. And we can stick to the topic of critical minerals. Japan built those redundant supplies after facing economic coercion and retaliation from China, I think, in terms of choking off some of those. And we're certainly at risk and experiencing some of that potential risk right now. So there is an importance and expedience to not just develop our own domestic supplies, but also look at in a strategic way how we go into whether that's Vietnam, Malaysia, other Indonesia, and build redundant supplies. And I would argue in the Biden administration, the Mineral Security Partnership gives us some vehicles by which to work with countries like Japan, Korea, and others to help build those, and perhaps even go into, the Koreans are going into Mongolia, perhaps go into other areas. But this is, I would agree with you, Ms. Weissel, that I think this is a key area where we can deepen our relationship in a positive way with Southeast Asian nations, and we should do so. And Madam Chairwoman, I think we have a hearing actually coming up soon looking at that particular issue. Let's go back to digital trade for a second. While I wish we could go back to TPP, I clearly thought digital trade was something that we would get under the Biden administration. It obviously didn't happen. It's in our interest, certainly in the region's interest. We can work off some of the existing digital trade models, whether that's taking the digital trade chapter out of USMCA or looking at some bilateral pieces. But maybe each of you, if you wanted to just touch on the importance of getting a digital trade deal done, maybe we'll start with Dr. Kwok and then work to the left with the region.
Thank you very much. I think in terms of the importance of a digital trade agreement, China is embedding its digital norms in the region through its deals with countries like Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, etc. And once those norms, the technology and the norms are embedded, I think it becomes quite difficult to reverse. So, I mean, there's very little. I doubt there's very little downsides to moving quickly on this issue, and I think the U.S. should be alert to it, lest it be in the same position as it is now in terms of critical minerals, where it allowed China to invest in Indonesia, since Indonesia banned the export of nickel and allowed China to invest heavily in its nickel processing. I think the United States was asleep at the wheel in that respect, and I think it needs to redouble its efforts in terms of reaching and arriving on a digital trade agreement with Southeast Asian countries.
Right, Ms. Weissel.
Yeah, I would just add that China is active in this region. They have just recently updated their China-ASEAN agreement, which now includes additional digital commitments, and there's active cooperation between the two. So I think that's something that we really should keep a close eye on. But I also would note that the EU is engaged with a number of ASEAN regions, and the EU has a different approach to digital trade rules than we do. So absent the U.S. direct engagement in the region, we're ceding it to others.
Mr. Bowling.
I would just reinforce that last point. We have 325 million people in a world of 8 billion and growing. We can either help set rules in partnership with others, or we can end up taking the rules. What we've already seen is almost everybody in Southeast Asia has now adopted a European-style GDPR regime. They did that because we had no alternative, and they asked and asked and asked, and we didn't present it. Later this year, ASEAN will likely release its own digital economic framework agreement. We don't know what rules will be in there, but they won't be rules that the U.S. helped set. And that will be the story as long as we decide to take our ball and go home.
Great. And while IPUF would not have been the approach that I would have taken, it was an approach that the Biden administration took. And in our conversations, we looked at it as a high standard negotiation, but not each country could actually meet, whether it was the labor standards, environmental standards, et cetera. And I think how I pitched it to the administration, and I would pitch it to the Trump administration, was in a modular way, right? There, it's easy for us to do a trade deal with Singapore and Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Korea. it's essential for us to do a trade agreement with Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, and each of those countries may not, at this particular moment in time, be able to meet those high standards. But if we use a carrot approach, if we use, and I agree with you, it's not really a trade deal without market access, because obviously that's what folks want. If the Trump administration's listening, I would strongly urge us to, in a bipartisan way, to try to figure this out. And if we don't set the norms and the rules, somebody else is, and we may not like them when we wake up. I'll yield back.
Thank you. Let me